that was laid on a festival. Bet Shammai said it may be eaten even on that day of the festival, and Bet Hillel said cannot be eaten on that day of festival. We explained that there are 4 different directions in that. Yesterday we discussed 2 of them. Today we're going to discuss the other 2. So for those who are more familiar, I'll wrap up the 4 and then we zoom in the 2 that left. 4 points following Beit Hillel that tells us you cannot eat that egg that laid on a festival. 1, we learn Rav Nachman. What did Rav Nachman tell us? He said that this is called תרנגולת העומדת לביצים. You have a chicken that designated to have eggs. And we explained yesterday that there are 2 separate entities. One is chicken that you designated to have eggs from them, and the other one is the chicken that you have for food. You're planning to eat them. Since it's under the category of chicken that has the designation for eggs, therefore it's called muktzeh. It's set aside, and the rule is whatever comes out of muktzeh, it's muktzeh. And therefore, Rav Nachman follow the idea of Beit Hillel that egg is prohibited to eat, to be eaten, and also, as the Tosfot said, even to carry it. The second one is Rabbah. Rabbah said, no, we're talking here about chicken that designated for food, תרנגולת העומדת לאכילה. And he said that's deoraita, that's a biblical prohibition. Since that chicken designated for food, the big question is why you don't eat the egg. So Rashi tells us is the whole idea of hachana, that you're preparing, that's basically part of the muktzeh. The Torah said, "Vehechinu et asher yaviu." You have to prepare what you have for the what you're planning to have in advance. So this is Yom Tov Achar Shabbat. This is a festival that occurred on Sunday, or Shabbat Shachrei Yom Tov, or Shabbat that subsequent of a festival that occurred on Friday. So therefore you have the hachana, the preparation me'etmol, day before, and since it's an issue of violation of biblical precept, that's the reason why Hillel said that egg that laid on the festival cannot be eaten that day. Now I'm going to give you a heads up what we're going to study today. It's another 2. We cover only 2. There's another 2 views. One is the view of Rav Yosef, which soon you're going to study. Rav Yosef said it's gzeira murchevet, that the sages put a broader decree, and it's called gzeira mishum peirot hanoshrim. The Gemara tells us in both in Tractate Eruvin, page 39b, and also in Tractate Psachim, page 56, that the fear is you have on the tree fruits, and if the fruits left the tree, left the branches during the sacred day, what happened? People take that tree, that fruit, and use it. So they said the same way it's prohibited on Shabbat and a festival, we juxtapose that to egg that laid on Shabbat on a festival, and they said since we prohibited those fruits, it's applied here as well. That's Rav Yosef, and that's the reason of Beit Hillel. The fourth one is Rav Yitzchak, who is going to tell us that it's rabbinic decree that's called mashkim shezavu. If you have a liquid that came out, for example, of a fruit, so that liquid, they are basically coming out unexpectedly, and therefore you cannot use it. So we basically have 4 avenues, arba shitot, to follow the idea of Beit Hillel, who tells us, what did Beit Hillel tell us? That egg that laid on festival, you cannot eat it that day. And so far we learned 2, and we're about to learn the other 2. So we are on the very bottom of page 2b. Rav Yosef Amar, Gzeira mishum peirot hanoshrin. Rav Yosef said that the prohibition of that egg that laid on the festival, according to Beit Hillel, it's because of the fruits that fall from the tree, and fruits that fall from the tree on Shabbat or on festival may not be eaten. And we, as we explained, juxtapose that to egg, and we said that therefore you cannot use it. So basically Rav Yosef followed that Mishnah that speaks about chicken that designated for food, that you don't have there neither muktzeh nor nolad, and the reason it's not because of muktzeh, not because of nolad, but because of decree of those fruits from the trees. Since we said fruits that fall from the trees, you cannot use that on Shabbat and festival, so the same thing here, egg that laid on festival, you cannot eat it that day. Amar le Abaye challenged that, and he said to Rav Yosef, Perot hanoshrim tama mai. Let's go to the original idea. We said that those fruits that left the tree, you cannot eat them. What's the reason you cannot eat them if they fall from the tree on Shabbat on a festival? Page 3, Gzeira shema ya'aleh ve'itlosh. The rabbis put a decree that, guess what happened? You allow people to use it, so the fellow who is not educated, what he is going to do, he's going to climb the tree and pick the fruits, and it's he followed the prohibition of harvesting, which is prohibited on Shabbat. So Tosfot asks, what's the connection between harvesting and this? Quite the contrary, it's the opposite. So Tosfot said, the whole idea is melechet ochel nefesh. We explained in the introduction, if you remember yesterday, that one of the notion, one of the reasons that we involve with all of that is basically on Yom Tov, on a festival, you cannot do work the same as Shabbat. But on festival, it's relatively more lenient. Why? If someone intentionally violates Shabbat, so he deserves kila. And if it's unintentional, it's or karet, depends.
Right.
And unintentional, you need to bring a sin offering. In Yom Tov, it's only malkot. However, the only exception of Yom Tov, unlike Shabbat, is melechet ochel nefesh. If you need it really for food on the festival itself, so
it's just malkot for just for willing,
unintentional.
Unintentional.
Yes.
But what about intentional violation of Yom Tov?
Tosfot basically elaborates on that a lot. Look how large is this Tosfot.
Mm-hmm.
He elaborates on that a lot. לפני Yoshua too. I remember years back when I was in a yeshiva, we engaged with this Tosfot at least for a week.
Mm-hmm.
But I just, since it's Daf Yomi, I'll just give you the vignette,
Understood.
the key point. Anyway, so the fear is that you allow a person to do that, guess what he's going to do? He's going to climb over and pick a fruit, and that's a violation of harvesting. So they said, wait a second. Hi gufa gzeira ve'anan neikum ve'nigzor gzeira legzeira. The whole idea of the prohibition of eating fruits that left the tree on Shabbat or festival is what? Is a rabbinic decree. Now what you're doing, you are going and put a decree over the decree, which means you have now a new stuff, a new idea, that the prohibition against egg that laid on the festival, in order not to go to a violation of another rabbinic decree, which is fruits that left the tree, the rabbis put a decree only in order for people not to violate the Torah law. So they put a fence around the Torah, and they put a decree. But you don't put a fence over the fence of the rabbis. In other words, the fence was the fruits that left the tree. Now you put another fence of the egg around the fence for the fruit of the tree. It's like putting fence around another fence. So you cannot tell me, the rabbi said, that the reason that egg that left delayed on the festival and Beit Hillel said you cannot eat it, it's because you have another rabbinic decree that said that fruits that left the tree on Shabbat or festival, you cannot use it because a person may be climb and he is violation of harvesting. So the Gemara responded and said, guess what? Kula chada gzeirahi. Guess what? All of the prohibitions are component of one single decree. And in a simple word, the whole idea of fruit and the eggs, it's the same decree. It's not they put a decree of egg that laid and therefore is prohibited on festival because if you eat it, it led to the fruits that fell off the tree. No. The reason it's because it's the whole idea of someone maybe climb over and pick and detached, which is basically the tolada of ktsira, it's like the derivative of harvesting. Now, so far, we cover 3 explanations of Beit Hillel. 3 explanations of what? Of the prohibition against eating the egg that laid on the festival. Okay? We have, just to refresh our memory, we have Rav Nachman, we have Rabbah, and we have Rav Yosef. Now we're going to the 4th one, and that's the last one. Rabbi Yitzchak Amar. Rabbi Yitzchak tells us the prohibition of eating the egg, according to Beit Hillel, it's because Gzeira mishum mashkim shezavu. So that again, based on Gemarrah in Eruvin 39b, that said that liquid that seeps from the fruit, that's a problem of that day. In other words, you have a fruit, and certain fruits produce liquid. That liquid is prohibited that particular day. That's the Mishnah, if you remember, Tractate Shabbat, page 143b. So we juxtapose the egg to that liquid. And we said, since the egg comes out from the place that they are swallow, which is the mother's, how do you say it, wound? Mm-hmm. The mother's wound. So the same way is liquid that come out of the fruit, it prohibited at that Shabbat, at that day. Abaye challenged that. And Amar le Abaye, Mashkin shezavu tamamai. The reason that you prohibited liquid that left by themselves naturally on Shabbat and festival, the reason that they are prohibited, Gzeira Shema Yischot. The rabbis put a decree that one was purposely squeeze the fruit. Why purposely squeeze the fruit? A person wants to drink the juice that come out of the fruit. So guess what he do? He squeeze it and then he drink. Squeezing it is a biblically prohibition. It's called melechet dash. It's the labor of threshing. So therefore, that's the reason why it's prohibited. Rashi explained that it's the same as threshing something from the field, like you take the grain and you separated it. So biblically speaking, only olives and grapes you are forbidden if you squeeze them, and the rest, as we learn in Shabbat 143, is rabbinic. So he said, Hi gufa gzeira. We asked the same question. Since the whole idea of drinking liquid that came naturally, it's only rabbinic decree. Ve'anan nekum v'nigzor gzeira legzeira. Again, the same story. We have a rabbinic decree in order to avoid drinking that fruit. Now what do? You take the prohibition, rabbinic prohibition of eating an egg that laid on a festival in order for people not to violate another rabbinic prohibition, which is drinking liquid that left naturally the fruits, the rabbis put only decrees as a fence around biblical commandments in order to make sure that people will not violate it. But you don't put a rabbinic fence around another rabbinic fence. So you cannot tell me the reason that the Beit Hillel tells us that you cannot eat the egg that laid out of the chicken during festival. It's because you have another rabbinic decree that applies to a liquid that left the fruit. So the same answer the rabbi said, Kula chada gzerai. They said all the prohibition are components of one decree. So when the sages prohibited the Jews, they banned the eating of an egg laid on a festival for the same reason, because the action is similar. Even in the egg, you don't have this fear of a person squeeze it. Now, so far what we understand, we have 4 different Amoraim, 4 different Shitot, 4 different rabbis that explain why egg that laid on festival prohibited by Beit Hillel. Now the Gemara elaborated and tells us why each of them rejected. Kulhu, all the so far, Rabbah, Rav Yosef, Rav Yitzchak, number 2, 3, and 4, okay? All of them, Kerav Nachman lo Amri. They disagree with the first one. Again, the first one is Rav Nachman. Then we have Rabbah, Rav Yosef, Rav Yitzchak. So Rabbah, number 2, 3, and 4, all the 2, 3, and 4 disagree with number 1. Which means that what number 1 said, what Rav Nachman said, that we are talking about eggs that designated for what? A chicken that designated to laid eggs, that it's considering a muktzeh, and therefore the egg that coming out, that laid out of the chicken, it's also muktzeh. Kikushian, that's the way we asked in the previous daf, that if the disputation between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel, it's because if the sages increase a prohibition of muktzeh or not, what's the reason that they disputed in regard to the egg? There also should be a disputation between the mother and the eggs that laid out of the chicken. So the Gemara explained, in other words, they need to say, this apply Beitzah, an egg that laid from a chicken that designated to laid eggs. Beit Shammai said you can use it, Beit Hillel said you cannot use it. Why you don't use that language? Keraban namelo amri. Even you tell me that you follow Rabbi, it's also a problem. Why? Because he said that the whole reason is because hachana, that you need to prepare in advance, unlike of Nachman, of Yosef, and of Yitzchak, hachana late lehu. Because the Rabbah tells us that something that was prepared in a way by heaven on Shabbat, it prohibited in the following subsequent Yom Tov, which is Sunday, or the opposite, or if it was Friday holiday, follow Shabbat, but no one else agree with that. So Ela Rav Yosef Maitama lo Amar ke Rabbi Yitzchak. What's the reason that Rav Yosef, who said that it's decreed because of fruits that left the tree, is there in the hall, they say the same as Rav Yitzchak, it's because the liquid that come out of the fruits, because both of them say that the only reason it's because a rabbinic decree, rabbinic zera. Why Rav Yosef doesn't hold that you have to put a fence of fruits that left the tree and not liquids that left? Amar lach, Rav Yosef responds, Beitzah ochla, uperot ochla, la pukei mashke delav ochla. Very simple, obvious answer. He said, egg, it's considering as a food. fruits or produce, it's also fruits. Versus liquid that comes out of what? Of fruits, it's in a new category. It's called mashkin, it's a fruit, it's a juice. Mm-hmm. So therefore, when they put the decree for those juice that left the fruit, the egg was not part of that decree, because it's not considering a ochel, it's considering a liquid. So that's two different things. ורבי יצחק מייתמה לו אמר כרב יוסף. Why the other way around? Why he doesn't say it's because that the fruits that left the tree? אמר לך, רבי יצחק respond, ביצה בלועה ומשכין בלועים. Guess what happened? You have the chicken and you have the egg inside the chicken. So it's come naturally out of the chicken's body. Liquid is inside the fruit, which means it's coming out, it's the liquid's coming out of the fruits. So therefore you can compare the two. You exclude fruits that falls from the tree, which are standing exposed on the tree. So consequently, the comparison between fruits that falls and the egg is weaker than comparison between liquid that sip from the fruit and an egg. ואף רבי יוחנן סבר, so also Rabbi Yochanan's hold that egg that was laid on the festival prohibited because gzeira mishum mashkin shezavu. So he hold that it's a decree due to the liquid that sipped from fruit. How he prove it? The Rabbi Yochanan Rami, the Rabbi Yehuda, the Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yochanan challenged Rabbi Yehuda, a contradiction between one location of Rabbi Yehuda and another. Umeshane tnan. We learn in Mishnah Tractate Shabbat, page 143b. En sochatin et haperot. You not squeeze the fruits on Shabbat. Leotzi mehem mashke. You cannot take orange on Shabbat, slice it and squeeze it to bring a juice. Ve'im yatz'u me'atzmam asurin. Let's say if you have certain fruit that naturally sip out liquid, so as long as it's Shabbat, you cannot drink it. You have to wait after Motzei Shabbat, after the Shabbat is over. Why? Because the rabbis understand the moment you allow that, people who are not educated, they see a religious person drinking from fruits that come out. He take a cup, he put it under the fruit, and he start drinking it. So people are not religious. What they said, oh, if that's the case, I saw him, so I can slice the fruits and squeeze it. That's the whole story many, many times, that people are not educated, and the rabbis put a fence. So Rav Yehuda Omer, im le'ochalim, if the fruits, the produce were gathered together in order to eat them, hayotze mehen mutar, the liquid comes out, you can drink it that day. Why? Because his intent is what? To eat the fruit, not to eat the liquid that come out of fruit. So we are not concerned that maybe he comes to squeeze them in his hand. So therefore the sages not bother to put a decree there. Ve'im lemashkin, if that in gathering of the produce was the purpose of have the juice coming out of them, hayotze mehen asu, that something that comes out of them is prohibited. Why? Because his intent, you remember how many times we said that our goal is the intent of a person? Mm-hmm. And if his intent is to have the juice that's coming out of them, we fear, the sages have a concern that if you allow to have him drink something that comes out on Shabbat, he is going to go to the next level, either him or others who see him, and going to squeeze in their hands. So therefore the rabbis put a fence and said until the Shabbat is over, you cannot do that, period. Alma, we understand from all of that, Kol ochalin le Rabbi Yehuda uchla de efratu. So they said all food that comes out of another food is classified as food that was separated according to Rabbi Yehuda. So they said Veraminu. Rabbi Yochanan challenged that and he said, this is contradicted to what Rabbi Yehuda said in the different Mishnah. Now we zoom in a different subject and soon you see how it's connected. We have the Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah, unlike other festivals worldwide, including Israel, we're celebrating Rosh Hashanah 2 days. Now listen carefully what's happening. You have 2 days Rosh Hashanah. Why do you have 2 days Rosh Hashanah? Because originally speaking, they're not sure. So if you bear in your mind, since you're not sure, it may happen the first day is the real one, the second day is nothing. Or the second day is the real one, the first day is nothing. Now listen carefully what's going on. Based on the Gemarrah in Eruv in 39, ועוד אמר רבי יהודה, מתנה אדם על כלכלה של פירות ביום טוב ראשון. So a person may put a condition, he stipulate a condition with regard to a basket of fruits that wasn't maaser, that wasn't tied, on the first day of the festival, and he can say, if today is the true festival day, the second festival day is actually a weekday, and the vice versa, therefore the fruit permitted once a separate tied from it, as on the other day weekday, it's okay, and vice versa. If today is a fact weekday and tomorrow is a festival, I hereby separate tied today, okay? ביום טוב ראשון ואוכלה בשני, וכן ביצה שנולדה בראשון תאכל בשני. The same applied egg the first day, so now I go the second day. So Rabbi Yochanan zoom in and he said, בשני in, בראשון לא. So the second day, Rabbi Yehuda allows the egg that was born the previous day, but the first day not. So that's basically the same as mashkin shezavu. So I would like to stop for a second, just to make sure that everyone understands, and wrap up what we studied so far. I want to make sure that we are all on the same page. Let's give ourselves just 2-3 minutes to review so we all feel comfortable, okay? We have an egg. The egg laid out of the chicken on the festival. Beit Hillel tells us you cannot eat that egg today. It's the festival, you cannot eat it. We going in 4 different directions to understand why Beit Hillel said you cannot eat it that day. Number 1 was Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman tells us it was a specific designated chicken for the purpose of having eggs. And since that chicken designated in advance by the owner to use it solely for eggs, therefore it's designated as muktzeh, it's set aside. And therefore anything that comes out of muktzeh, it's also muktzeh, it's also set aside. So therefore that egg is prohibited both to eat and even to carry it from one location to another, period. That's Rav Nachman. Second view is Rabbah. Rabbah tells us, guess what's the reason that Beit Hillel said that the egg that laid out of the chicken on a festival is prohibited? It's because that chicken is designated for food. As you know, we explained it yesterday, that there are certain farmers or certain people that designated certain chicken, for example, to be eaten solely. So therefore, he said that's a biblical prohibition, and we learn, the Rashi leads us and explain when the Torah used the term vehechinu et asher yaviu, you should prepare in advance. So since the issue of preparation, why? Because either the festival occurred on Sunday, subsequent of Shabbat, or the festival occurred on Friday, which Shabbat was subsequent of the festival. So therefore, all the preparation was made, needs to be made in advance. Otherwise, you are in biblical violation. That chicken is for food. Third view, we learn, it's Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef said that that's a broader rabbinic decree, applies to a perot anoshrim, fruits that left the tree. Fruit that left the tree, we have an issue of ktsira, of harvesting, that you allow one thing, people will feel that everything is okay and can detach the fruits, and it's basically ktsira, is harvesting, it's prohibited. Then we have Rav Yitzchak. Rav Yitzchak said that that's a decree of what? Liquid that comes out of fruits. You see a liquid that comes out of fruits, the rabbi said, wait a second, you cannot take and drink that fruits on that day. Guess why? Because that's basically can be indirect toladat dash, a derivative of what? Of dash, which is threshing, I think.
Yeah, it's like separating.
Separating,
yeah.
threshing, thank you. So basically all these four avenues follow the explanation why Beit Hillel prohibited. Now, the Gemara tells us that Rabbi Yochanan follow Rabbi Yitzchak in the sense of the prohibition of mashkin shezavu, liquid that comes out of these fruits, and the source follow Rabbi Yehuda. On one hand, you're not allowed to squeeze fruits on Shabbat because is toladat dash, it's a subsequent of threshing, with separating, which is a biblical prohibition. Now, if those liquid comes out on Shabbat or festival, we have gzeira shema yischot. We have a decree that a person come and squeeze it because he sees one thing can lead to another, and therefore it prohibited to drink it. Versus if this is a fruits that omed la'achila, that designated for food, so you don't have this decree of shema yischot, maybe he squeezed, because the designation of that produce was solely for food. The same applied to liquid. Since that fruit designated for drinking, so if you allow those liquid that comes out of the tree by themselves, what the people will do? People will go and squeeze by themselves. They'll be in violation of schita. So we put in conclusion in the point of Rabbi Yehuda that anything that comes out of food, of ochel, it's considering part of the fruits, chelek mea ochel, parts of the fruit, even in a situation of liquid. So we ask a question, how about Rosh Hashanah? We said in Rosh Hashanah, since Rosh Hashanah, one of the days of the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah is a secular day. So the question is, since you are in the predicament, you're in a quandary, you don't know which day is the proper day. So if it was laid in the first day of Rosh Hashanah, so the second day it's a regular day, and vice versa, right? If the second day, so it's not entered the domain of muktzeh. So Rabbi Yochanan asked a question. Basically, he said, I understand the first day you cannot eat because it's davar hayotze me'ochel, it's something that comes of the fruit. The same applied to liquid. So why the first day it's prohibited? So basically, what happened so far, we have the issue of Rabbi Yehuda contradicted what is said in the Mishnah, that fruits that come out of ochel, of food, it's an issue, versus here that you see in the liquid that sip out of the fruits is okay to use. Umeshane Rabbi Yochanan muchlefet hashita. So we said, guess what? Everything has to turn around the other way around, which means, according to Rabbi Yehuda, there is no difference between something that comes out from food, that something come out of liquid. So therefore, if it's come out of the chicken, you have this decree of mashkin shezavu, liquids that came out of those fruits. And Rabbi Yochanan basically asked if that's the case, is a contradiction between what Rabbi Yehuda said in one location, Rabbi Yehuda said the other location. So the decree that we said over the egg that laid on a festival is the same as Rabbi Yitzchak said, that this is decree of liquid that comes out, mashkim shezavu. The only reason is, they said here, it's because so because you see Rabbi Yochanan that ask that there is a contradiction between the cases of egg and liquid that ooze, one may conclude Shma mina chad tamahu, that the same reason in both cases. An egg is prohibited on a festival because you have the rabbinic decree against liquid that ooze from fruit. 3b, Ravina come and said, Ravina amar leolam lo teipoch. He said, no, actually do not reverse the opinions. So now we go again backward, which means that what we have here is the real one, that Rabbi Yehuda allows liquid that zu, and the sages prohibited. The Rabbi Yehuda that said in that tractate Eruvin that the egg is allowed to use only the second day of Rosh Hashanah, the first day is prohibited. Livrehem de Rabbanan kamar lehu. He said that in order to respond the sages, according to them, that they prohibited the egg because liquid that seep, and that's what he said to them. Ledidi afilu berishona misharia. According to my view, even the first day of Rosh Hashanah, the eggs is allowed. Why? The uchla, the efratu. Because this is a food that's separate from food. Because again, that chicken is designated for what? For food. So it's not applies all this decree, Shema Yisrael, that maybe he squeezed it. Ela lididhu, according to you, that you prohibited that egg. Because you hold that something that designated for food, it's part of that decree of liquid that's it. Odulimiha de basheni sharia. At least come to my court and agreed that the second day of Rosh Hashanah, that egg that laid out is permissible. Why? Dishtei kedushoten. Because the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, it's two separate sanctity. Why? Because you have a dilemma, you have a quandary. You are not sure which one is the correct one. So since you are, so you know that only one day is a real day of Rosh Hashanah, so therefore you cannot prohibit the second day eggs that laid the first day because of decree of liquids that seep out of that fruit. Why? Because if the first day is a sacred and the second day it's a regular day, and there is something that seep out the fruit on a festival, you're allowed to use them the following day. So, and vice versa. If the first day is a regular day, and so
then you prefer something in advance of the whole day. So
liquid that come out of the regular day, allowed to use the following day. Amre le Rabbanan. So the sages respond to Rabbi Yehuda, and they said, "Lo, cannot follow your way. Why? Kedusha chati." And we can derive from that a lot of things. That the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, it's like one long day, one long sanctified holy days. So it's like Yom Arichta, one long day. And since those liquid that left during the festival are prohibited that day, therefore even it was the first day of Rosh Hashanah, it will prohibited the end of the following day, Motzei Yom Tov HaSheni, the conclusion of the second day of the festival, because it's all considering as one long day. And that's huge difference between Rosh Hashanah and other festival. Another response to this contradiction in the word of Rabbi Yehuda. Ravina Brede Ravula Amar, Hacha. Here the Mishnah in Eruvin, that dealing with the egg that laid on Rosh Hashanah, בתרנגולת העומדת לגדל ביצים. So here we talk about the egg, the chicken that designated for laying egg. Now it's a different story. Rabbi Yehuda letamei, Rabbi Yehuda that prohibited that egg on the first day, he said the itle muktzeh, because he held that the prohibition of muktzeh applies. Why? Because the egg is produced by something muktzeh, so it is certainly muktzeh itself. So what we understand that all the idea of halakha of food that was separated is inapplicable to this situation, to this case. Meitile. So now we challenge the two explanation of the prohibition of that egg, because we said that there are four, now we're dealing with the other two. Meitile. אחד ביצה שנולדה בשבת, ואחד ביצה שנולדה ביום טוב. אין מטלטלין אותה, לא לכסות את הכלי, ולא לסמוך בה כראי המיתה. So regardless, both eggs that was laid on Shabbat or on a festival, both considered to be muktzeh, and therefore a person cannot use it to cover a vessel with it, nor to support the legs of a bed with it, whatever it is. In those days there's different needs. No. אבל כופה עליה את הכלי בשביל שלא תישבר. So, but you can cover the egg with a vessel so it does not break. That you can do. וספיקה אסורה. And since this egg, it's half away, either prohibited or permissible, because you're not sure if, originally you're not sure if it was laid on a festival or before that. So, ואם נתערבה באלף, כולם אסורות. That's something that we learn also in הלכות כשרות. That all of a sudden, if, imagine that you own a chick house, and you put that egg that was laid on the festival, and all of a sudden it mixed with many others. Here they exaggerate, they said with thousands others. So they said, this is not batel barov, this is not included with all the, not incorporated with all the rest, and the moment you don't recognize that one, all the other, even thousand, cannot be used. So every one of them, it may be the one that is prohibited, and therefore you cannot use all of them. So now we explain it. Bishlama le Rabba de Amar, we understand the reason of Rabba that said that eggs that was born on a festival prohibited, mishum hachana, remember we said it, preparation vechinu, haves feika deoraita. This is a biblical dilemma, quandary. Why? Because you are not sure when exactly the egg was laid. Because Rabbah learned this idea from the pasuk והכינו את אשר יביאו וכל ספקא דאורייתא לחומרא. Anytime you have a biblical predicament, you go stringent. So אלא לרב יוסף ולרבי יצחק דאמרי משום גזירה, they said that it's rabbinic decree. ספקא דרבנוני וכל ספקא דרבנון לכולה. This is only rabbinic, so if it's rabbinic, you should go lenient. So Rabbi Akiva Iger have a big mahalach here, because according to Rabbi Akiva Iger, it can be sfek sfeika, or even sfek sfeika mitapech, but I'm not going there because it's above the scope of this discussion. But basically, we challenge that. So the Gemara responds and says, sfeika atan lesafek treifa. So we here speak about the animal with the condition that will cause it to die within 12 months, which is called treifa, which is a prohibition by Torah law. The uncertainty with regard to a legal status of the chicken is relevant to the egg. Now we go to the second clause of the Beitzah. Nitarva be'elef kulam asurot. We said that this egg mixed with the other, let's say, thousands eggs. So this isur v'heter, if you have one that you're not sure, so when it's come to egg, not betela berov. So therefore you prohibited all the thousands eggs.
Now what, Rabbi, question, in a situation, for example, with a very large pot of stew or something like that, that a fly falls into, is the whole pot then, what about, or what about the 160?
Now you're dealing with isur v'heter, which is a beautiful question. Basically by halakha, it's a good question. If you have a pot, even with expensive meat, and the fly comes in, and boom, the chef opened, and lo and behold, inside the pot is a dead fly. By halakha, unlike other situation that you said is bottle beshishim, when it's come to a fly, even by thousand, it's not. You have to throw away the entire pot. we treated a dead fly, it's not because of FDA reasons. Because of halacha, we treated a dead fly the same in that manner as 1,000 of the eggs. The idea of 160 you hear, that's applied to a mixture of non-kosher meat with a kosher one.
Or even
then you go by
maybe
160.
milchik utensil with the
but
meat.
when it's come to a dead, even the size of a fly, by halacha, afilu be'elef lo batel, even by thousands, that's hisu veheter, you cannot, it's not batel barov. Okay, so it's a good question. If you tell me that egg, safek yom tov, safek chol, if that egg is in doubt, if it's a festival or it's a regular day, davar sheyesh lo matirim, because after the holiday, after the festival, you can use the egg, just for that day you can use it. וכל דבר שיש לו מתירים אפילו באלף לא בטל. That's something that we said it many times in many areas. Any object that whose prohibition is temporary is not nullified even by 1,000 permitted items. So because we have this prohibition will lapse on its own, there is no need to make use of the option of nullification. אלא יאמר ספק טריפה. But if you tell me if it's a contrary that maybe it's treif, דבר שאין לו מתירים, because treif is always prohibited, ותיבטל ברובה, so nullified by simply the majority. So why the Beitzah said that it's not nullified? וכיתם הביצה חשובה ולא בטלה, because it's considering something important, significant, and it's not nullified. הניחא למאן דאמר כל שדרכו להימנות שנינו. That's good, but one who said that any item that matters is also counted, that it's something sold by unit, whether by weight or volume, is considered significant. אלא למאן דאמר שדרכו להימנות שנינו, מה יקרא מימר? But the one who said that the item whose manner is exclusively to be counted, that is always sold by unit, it's considered significant, what can be said? Although eggs are often sold by unit, they are also often sold by weight or volume. So why the Beitzah said that it's not nullified? The Tanya, Ditnan. We learn in the Mishnah, Tractate Ola, chapter 3. Mi shehayu lo chavilei tiltan. One who has a bundle of clover. It's some type of legumes. So that we use in Pesach, the whole idea of legumes, right? Shel kil'ei hakeren, that were for diverse kind of food crops that grew in a vineyard.
Right?
Yidalku, you burn them. Why? Because the mixture of the vineyard prohibited by any joy, and you need to burn them. Nitarvu ba'acherot. If it was intermingled with others, and va'acherot ba'acherot, and others were intermingled with others, yi kulam yidalku divrei Rabbi Meir, they all need to be burned according to Rabbi Meir. V'chachamim omrim, ya'alu be'achat u'matayim. The sages say that they may be nullified by 1 part of 200 similar parts. So if you have one bundle that mixed with the others, so when you have this prohibition is less than the 1/2 of 1% of the permitted portion, the prohibition is nullified. So if you have this bundle, that mixture with the other 200 permissible bundles, so you take one bundle from the mixture and you burn it as a safeki lime, a uncertain, diverse kind, and the rest it's permitted. Shaya Rabbi Meir Omer, because Rabbi Meir used to say, Et shedarko limanot mekadesh. Rabbi Meir tells us that whose manner is exclusively to be counted is considered significant and cannot be nullified. So I explain in my book, Biurei Klomar Barashi al Hashas. There is a Rashi here that said, Klomar lehache amar Rabbi Meir, kulam yidalku veleit leubitu. So originally speaking, I think Rashi have a problem. It looks like double time, 2 times, they said the same thing. And it's not, Rashi wants to say that it's not 2 times. So he wants to say that the sages come to tell us that derived from what Rabbi Meir said. What Rabbi Meir said is Et shedarko limanot, that whose matter is exclusively by the count, so it's sanctified, and it renders the entire mixture prohibited. V'chachamim omrim, and the sages said, the eino mekadesh ela mishisha dvarim, that the only 6 items are sufficiently significant to render the entire mixture prohibited, forbidden. So, so what the sages said, it's based on the Rashi Tractate Zvachim, page 72. What the sages said is significant is something that is large, or something that you pay a lot of money, or number 3, that the one that it's more significant from that specific species. Rabbi Akiva omer 7, ve'elu hen, and here are the list. Number 1, egozei perech, high quality nuts from perech, verimonei vadan, and pomegranate from Badan. So this is the name of places. That's basically on the Tractate Ola, page chapter 3. V'chaviot stumot, and seal barrels of wine. V'chilfei tradim, and branches of spinach. V'kilchei kruv, and cabbage stalks. Udlat yevanit, and a Greek pumpkin. Rabbi Akiva mosif, Rabbi Akiva adds, אף כיכרות של בעל הבית הראוי לעורלה. Even loaves of a homeowner. הראוי לעורלה, עורלה. So, which was fit for forbidden to do עורלה, fruits that grow during the first 3 years after the tree is planted, is prohibited due to an עורלה. הראוי לחילי הכרם, diverse kind of food crops that grow in a vineyard, is prohibited due to diverse kind of vineyard. That's the Gemarrah Avodah Zarah, page 74. And he said, Ve'itmar ala, and we learn about it. Rabbi Yochanan amar, et shedarko limanot shanu, v'Resh Lakish amar, et kol shedarko limanot shanu. We said that Rabbi Yochanan said only those matter that exclusively to be counted is significant cannot be nullified. So therefore it's prohibited by Rabbi Meir. And Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish said that any item whose matter is also be counted is significant cannot be nullified. And we understand that egg that come from the treifa, according to Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. So we understand that he believes that what Rabbi Meir said, that anything that you sell it in the count is not nullified, because many people are selling eggs according to the way that they count, so it's considering something that carries significance according to Rabbi Meir. So you can put this brighter that it's applied to egg that laid from something that is a treifa, and therefore it's not going to be nullified because it's considering important to follow Rabbi Meir. But how do you explain it according to Rabbi Yochanan? Because the egg is not sold exclusively by unit, and it is not significant, and therefore the egg of a treifa should be nullified by simple majority. Rabbi Papa said that this, according to the Rabbi Yochanan, this Tana who said that the egg cannot be nullified, is what? Tana de litra ktziothu. That's the Tana halacha concerning the litra of dried fig. Litra is from the Greek or Latin libra, that the modern pound is described. It's some abbreviation for a pound called libra. So that's basically a dry figs. דאמר כל דבר שבמניין, that any item that is counted, אפילו בדרבנן, even if it's prohibited by rabbinic law, לא בטיל, cannot be nullified, וכל שכן בדאורייתא, and more so, item that prohibited by Torah law. The egg is considering treifa. Ditnan, we learn in the Mishnah, that's basically the Mishnah in Tractate Trumot, chapter 4. Litrakziot, litra or dry fig, whose stem were removed and were dried and pressed in different vessels and shaped in 2 cycles. The obligation to tie fruits is by rabbinic law. Shedrasa al pi igol, that they press the figs unto the mouth of one of the circular vessels in which the circles are formed, ואינו יודע באיזה עיגול דרסה, and doesn't know which circular vessel he pressed it, על פי חבית, or על פי חבית, or if it's recalled that he pressed on the mouth of a barrel, ואינו יודע באיזה חבית דרסה, is not sure which barrel he pressed, על פי כוורת, ואינו יודע באיזה כוורת גרסה, or if it's recalled the press at the mouth of a straw receptacle, and he's not sure which one. So he said all of these scenarios, Rabbi Meir says that these cases are a dispute between the Tanaim in the past generation, as follows. Rabbi Eliezer, page 4, רואים את העליונות כאילו הן פרודות והתחתונות מעלות העליונות. One consider the upper circles of dry figs as though they are separate pieces rather than one unit. תחתונות מעלות את העליונות. And the lower ones, which were beforehand and have certainly been tied, nullify the upper one. And Rabbi Yeshua אומר, אם יש שם 100 פומים, if there is 100 mouths of different barrels, so ya'alu, so it's nullified by the ratio of 1 part of prohibited figs to 100 parts of similar. ואם לאו, if it's less than 100, for something that is a chulin, הפומין אסורים והשוליים מותרים. So therefore, the figs on the inside of vessel are permitted. So in other words, the mouth is prohibited, but the fig inside the vessel is permitted. So basically, Rabbi Meir's opinion is dispute. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, אם יש שם 100 פומים יעלו. If there is 100 mouth of vessels which permitted figs present there, so יעלו, that's nullified, the litra of the truma. ואם לאו, הפומים אסורים והשוליים מותרים. Otherwise, the figs of the mouth are prohibited and the bottom are permitted. רבי יהושע אומר, אפילו יש שם 300 פומים לא יעלו. Yeshua said, even there is a 300 mouth present there, they are not nullified. So the writer concluded, drasa be'igul, if one pressed the litra of figs into a circular vessel, ואינו יודע באיזה עיגול דרסה, but he's not sure, he doesn't know into which circular vessel he pressed it, דברי הכל יעלו, everyone agreed that prohibited figs, cakes are nullified. So the Gemara said, דברי הכל, everyone agrees. היינו פלוגתאי, this is their disputes, where is a literal nullified or not. So אמר רב פאפא, אחרי אמר רב פאפא said, דרסה בעיגול ואינו יודע באיזה מקום עיגול דרסה, if one press into a circular, that's what I meant, circular vessel, but does not know unto which place, which side of the circular vessel he pressed it, לצפונה ולדרומה, north or the south side, דברי הכל יעלו. So according to everyone, agrees that it's nullified. So it means, because it's not nimnet לעצמה, it's not counted independently, it's only part of the igul, because it's attached to it, and we're not sure which one. So therefore, even according to Rabbi Yoshua, Rabbi Yehuda hold that it's nullified to all the others. Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 5:13. Beitzim gmurot betarnegolet. One who slaughters a chicken on a festival and discovers fully developed eggs inside, it may eat the eggs immediately, as the sages did not apply the decree to uncommon cases. Peirot hanoshrim, that's Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 3:22. Fruits that fall from the tree on Shabbat or on festival day may not be eaten on that day. This prohibition applies even to fruit with regard to which there is uncertainty whether it fell that day. That's Talmud Yirushalmi. Mashkim shezavu, Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 3:30. Liquids that sipped on their own from fruits whose primary use is for juice, for example olives and grapes, or from fruits that are typically, although not exclusively, squeezed for juice, which is oranges, is prohibited on a festival. However, it is permitted to use liquids to sip on their own from fruits typically used for food. Schitat perot, that's important halacha, Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 3:20. It is prohibited to squeeze juice from olives and grapes on Shabbat. Likewise, one may not squeeze juice from any fruit that is typically squeezed for that purpose. However, it is permitted to squeeze juice from food that is typically used for food. If there are places where those fruits are squeezed for juice, some rabbis, like the Ramah, Magen Avraham, prohibited squeezing them only in those places, and others prohibited doing so everywhere. That's the Beit Yosef. The halacha is according to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, as the Rabbi Yochanan derivative to reverse the opinion, which means that this option and this idea is for the unattribute Mishnah. If one has two baskets of untied fruit in front of him, and then on the first festival day he designated this specific fruits of that day, and instead, if today is weekday, like we said in Rosh Hashanah, so the fruits in this basket is truma for the fruit of the other basket, and if today is holy, my statement is meaningless. And the second day of festival, he said, if today is weekday, the fruit is the basket is truma for the fruit of the other basket. He has leaves aside the basket that he has separated the truma and partake of the other one. Basically, that's the Rambam Ilchot Yom Tov, chapter 6. We talk about carrying egg, tiltul Beitzah. So, we said it is prohibited to move an egg laid on a Shabbat or festival. It may not even be touched, and its circular shape renders it very likely to move by mere touching. That Beit Yosef. However, it is permitted to cover it with a vessel to ensure that it does not break. That's Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 3:22, so you can cover it. If it is uncertain whether the egg was laid on Shabbat or on festival, the egg is prohibited. It is likewise prohibited even if it was mingled with other eggs, although some rabbis, like Beit Yosef, citing the Rashba, permit the mixture. With regard to rabbinic prohibition, which is when it is not a day that occurred after either Shabbat or a festival, if there is a pressing need or if a loss will be incurred, one may rely on a lenient ruling. That's Magen Avraham in the Mishnah. If the egg of uncertain legal status became intermingled with the other eggs, and the mixture subsequently became intermingled with other eggs, some prohibited the mixture, that's the shach, while others, the taz, permitted. If the egg become mingled with objects with different type, it is nullified if the mixture contains 60 parts of permitted food, that's 1 of 60. However, according to Rama, if one purposely added it to the food with the aim of permitting the egg, it is not nullified. That's Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 513 and Yoredea 102. We talk about kilei kerem, bundles of clover that prohibited food crops in a vineyard, and likewise other vegetables that are prohibited food crops in a vineyard. So this is Rambam, Ilchot Macharot Asurot, chapter 16. If they become mingled with the permitted substance 200 times their size, they are permitted. That's basically follow the sages. Now, in general, we discuss Dvarim She'enam Mitbatlim, and that's the last halacha of today. Items that cannot be nullified. That's the answer to the question of David. Shulchan Aruch Yoredea, chapter 110. An important prohibited object cannot be nullified, even 1 in 1,000. The 7 items the sages listed, as well as living creatures, can never be nullified. You remember the story of the fly. Other items, however, can be nullified. The halacha is according with the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, who is, as his ruling is stated anonymously before the dispute. The Rama maintain that any object that it's occasionally counted by unit, so the Bach said cannot be nullified, while the Rama hold that this principle applies only to objects that are invariably sold by unit. If there is uncertainty whether or not an item is significant, it can be nullified, as it is uncertainly with regard to prohibition of rabbinic law. That's the Rama. So the general principle is that any object that is significant in a particular place is prohibited and cannot be nullified in that place. That's, again, the one we elaborate on that in Shulchan Aruch Yoredea, chapter 110.
ויחם לשולוים מלאכי השולוים מלאכי